If you're enjoying Haunted UK Podcast on the road, please consider supporting the show on Patreon or Ko-fi. Just search for the Haunted UK Podcast to find us. I'm travelling the length and breadth of the UK, speaking to those who work within some of the country's most intriguing places. Have a location with a story? Or an experience you can't explain? Email contact us at hauntedukpodcast.com. I might be on the road to you next. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. On the 6th of September 2025, I was given exclusive access to one of the most notorious and historically charged locations in Britain, Oxford Castle and Prison, a site that has stood for nearly 1,000 years, a fortress, a prison, a place of execution, and according to many who work within its ancient walls, a place where the past may not be entirely at rest. After sitting down for interviews with members of the team, hearing first-hand accounts of unexplained experiences from those who know the building best, I was granted something few ever experience: a personal tour after the doors had closed to the public. So before we get into it, a little bit of history for you. Oxford Castle was built in 1071 following the Norman conquest by a baron loyal to William the Conqueror. Over the centuries, it evolved from a military stronghold to a county prison, one that held everyone from petty criminals to condemned murderers. The prison remained operational until 1996, marking nearly a millennium of continuous use. Within those walls, executions, torture, and unimaginable suffering became part of its legacy. So to help us unravel more of this building's haunted past, I'm joined by Kessia, who knows these walls better than most. Kessia, thank you so much for being our guide today. To begin with, could you tell us a bit about yourself, your role here at Oxford Castle and Prison, and how long you've been part of its story?
Yeah, so I am one of the operations duty managers here at Oxford Castle and Prison. I've been here for about 5 years nearly, and I've kind of done everything a little bit. Right. So, I've got a lot of stories.
I only touched briefly on the castle's long and complex history. Could you take us a little bit deeper into its origins, who built it, and what are some of the most pivotal moments in its timeline?
So it originally started off as an Anglo-Saxon settlement, and then a Norman baron called Robert D'Oyley comes along and decides this is going to be the perfect place for a castle. So he builds the castle around St George's Tower, which is the oldest part of the site. It's just over 1,000 years old. And then eventually the castle gets destroyed at the end of the English Civil War. And about 100 years later, a man called Daniel Harris decides that this is the perfect spot to build his dream prison. Right. So he builds it exactly as you see it today. The only exception is A Wing, which is just next to us here. And that is now part of the hotel, but that was built by the Victorians, and that's the last part of the site to be completed.
Right, okay. Are there any historical figures or prisoners who stand out to you personally? And if so, what makes their stories so compelling?
Yeah, so for me, I would say our prisoner, Isaac Darkin, who was here in the 1700s. Yeah. He was hanged for being a highwayman, and he was only 21 when he was executed. But in about 4 years of his life, he had, I would say, the most incredible and, I guess, movie-like
existence.
Yes, absolutely. Where he was a highwayman, he took over his father's business of cork cutting, which then failed. He joined the army, he joined the navy, he uncovered a plot to kill a guard on a ship, and because he snitched on them, they gave him a full pardon. He deserted both the army and the navy. He went to the Caribbean, he came back, became a highwayman again. He got into a bit of a sticky situation in, I think it was in Bath. And they, again, gave him a full pardon there. And then it kind of all comes crashing down in Nettlebed, where he holds up the wrong guy, and he's eventually arrested and brought here, where he's executed. But he is said to have been quite the ladies' man whilst he was here. If he ever held up a carriage full of ladies, he had them all get out and dance with him instead of stealing anything from them. And he would make sure that his hair was done nicely every day, and he always had his best clothes on, because people would of course come and visit the prisoners in prison. And he was always reading. That's been recorded as he was a bit of a bookworm, and he was a total ladies' man.
And all of that in 21 years?
In 4 years. He started that at the age of 17. Yeah.
Right, okay. So, yeah, a 21-year existence, but 4 years. He crammed all of that into 4 years.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That is, yeah. So there are rumours of hidden tunnels and forgotten cells beneath the castle. So what do we actually know about these spaces?
Yeah, so the hidden tunnels are a link between the old magistrates' court and the prison, and they are still there. They link the one particular cell up into the dock of the courtroom, and it's so that we could transport prisoners without them being seen by the public before their trial. Yeah. And then as soon as their trial was done, they would come back down. We believe that the saying, you're going down, or you've been sent down, comes from us, because we're one of the first recorded places to have these tunnels linking. Yeah. And after they would have been sentenced to go back to prison, the judge would say, send him back down.
Right, okay.
So that's how they'd come across.
So something about the tunnels as well. You've got a very, very famous paranormal investigator turning up here very soon.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned earlier that the tunnels were going to be opened up and you guys are going to actually be able to go down there.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say who the ghost hunter is?
Yeah, we've got Barry Guy coming down to share his expertise.
Right, okay.
So that'll be good.
What time does that start on the evening?
So the whole event starts at 8 o'clock, and then they get a little Q&A session with him, a little meet and greet, and then the investigation starts at about 11 o'clock-ish. We're going to start off in the tunnels, and then we're going to come back over to this site, and then they get free reign of the site. Okay.
What time does it finish then? What time would that...
About midnight. So
right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Have you organised this event, or is this... Are you sticking around for it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you first started working here, Cassia, did anything strike you as unusual? Were there moments that made you pause, say?
Not particularly when I first started. When I first started, I was in the gift shop every day, so there wasn't a huge amount that happened there. Occasionally we'd have things like fall off shelves and things like that. And there was always a bit of a rumour that there's a little ghost that likes to mess around in the gift shop, but we're not too sure about that. But then as I've been here a bit longer, you start to pick up on things. When I was tour guiding, multiple people would tell me similar things, and I know that they wouldn't have spoken to each other because they'd be days, weeks apart. They wouldn't have known each other. So you start to pick up on a few maybe there is something in this room. Yeah. And then there's been a few other little situations which I'm not too sure about.
Would you like to elaborate on it?
Yeah. Okay. So about 2 years ago now, I think it was, we were just finishing up our Halloween tours. Okay. And our last group of the evening was a school group. They were running late. So I opened the door to go and tell the tour guide that his tour was running late, and I saw him walk in full costume down the prison wing. Called out to him, he didn't answer. Called out to him again, and he came out from the staff room at the top of the stairs, which wouldn't have had time because that door was locked. He wouldn't have had time to get all the way up there, open and close that door without me hearing because I was stood right underneath it.
Right.
I thought it was a bit strange. I told him the group were running late. I walked out, closed the door, didn't think any more of it.
So just carried on?
Yep, because I think because it was near Halloween, I was like, you know what, bit strange. I'm just gonna ignore it. And then about 2 or 3 months later, I was on my own here in the building, opening up, and the first team member arrived to start opening up as well. And he came in and was like, oh, I've just seen this team member in full costume walk down the prison wing. I thought, no, you haven't. I'm the only one here, and that team member is not working today. So we went for a little walk around the site just to make sure that nobody had broken in.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anybody. That team member wasn't in at all that day, so we were quite confused. Again, we were like, maybe it was just a trick of the light. We'll think no more of it.
Right.
And then November last year, I did an event with Kieran O'Keefe, and I told him this story, but I didn't tell him what the tour guide looked like. I didn't tell him what he was wearing. And at the end of the night, his team came up to me and said, we saw this person walking down this corridor, which is where both me and my other colleague had seen this figure. And they described him perfectly. Now, he had quite a distinct haircut, and the costume that he would have worn was the Victorian prisoner outfit. And he wasn't working that night. I had no tour guides working that night. It was just myself and one other colleague.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a bit freaky that 3 different people have seen this figure.
The same thing.
Yeah.
And even from Kieran O'Keefe's guys as well. So that's a bit unusual with Kieran. Would you say that the atmosphere shifts once the public leaves? And have you ever felt that the building changes when it's quiet?
Yeah, I think it kind of relaxes a little bit. It's almost like, oh, okay, nobody's here. We can just sort of breathe a little bit. I would definitely say that the atmosphere does change sometimes. Sometimes when you're here and you're on your own, you're kind of hyper aware of everything. Yeah. But there's also some times where it does just feel like there's lots of other people with you, even if there's nobody else on site.
Right. Okay. I've got to ask this question. You mentioned earlier when we were chatting before this that there is one room in this castle that you kind of get the creeps in.
Yeah.
What is that room, and why do you get the creeps? What is it about this room?
I genuinely don't know. So we called this room Real Matilda's room, and it's in St George's Tower, which is the oldest part of the site.
Which we'll be going to see as well later on.
Yeah. And it's the room that we think Empress Matilda was kept in when she was here in 1142 during the Anarchy.
Right.
And we know that she escaped from the tower.
Yeah.
But we're not entirely sure of how. The story says that she abseils down the side of the tower, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
But we're not sure. But that room, it really unsettles me. I don't know why. I try to avoid it if I can.
Okay.
It just, I don't know why. I just get a bit of a feeling when I go in it. So yeah.
Putting aside the Kieran O'Keefe thing
Yes.
and that sighting, that triple sighting of that spirit or whatever it was, in your opinion, what is the most convincing story or piece of evidence that suggests to you that something supernatural may be going on here?
I would say the crypt. So when I was a tour guide, I would have multiple people on my tours tell me that there were 2 presences in the crypt. One was worse than the other. They could never work out if the less bad one was trapped there or was there to protect us from the really bad one. I've had multiple people tell me this. I've supervised other ghost hunts. They've also come and told me a similar thing. Yeah. And that, for me, is the thing where I'm like, maybe something is happening if multiple people are saying the same or a similar thing about one room in particular.
Right, okay. Finally, the big question. Do you believe Oxford Castle is truly haunted, or is it just simply the power of suggestion?
Oh, I don't know.
You're not going to sit on the fence.
I think I am. Because like there's lots of things that happen, but because we work here,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it we just kind of brush off because we don't want to think about it too much. And so I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I think maybe that there is something here.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's potentially as like really bad as some people have said. But yeah, I don't know for sure.
I mean, I'm really surprised at some of the hours that you guys work here, and you're really in this building pretty much on your own at times, just wandering around checking things. And it doesn't spook you or creep you out or anything like that.
No, I think I get used to it. And I kind of, there's definitely times where like I can work out which noises are just the building settling or me having walked through some creaky floorboards, things like that. But yeah, there are times where there's other noises, but because I'm here on my own, I don't want to think about it too much. Right. So I just brush it off, try and explain it away.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences. But this isn't the last we're going to hear from yourself, Kessia, because soon you're going to be taking me on a personal tour of the castle and we'll be recording every moment. So if something happens, you're all going to be right there with us. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So that brought my conversation with Kessia to a close, for now. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be hearing from her again later in the episode. But as the evening went on and the light outside the ancient walls began to fade, it was time to sit down with someone who sees a very different side of the building. Hayley Weiss, the marketing manager for Oxford Castle and Prison, works at the heart of preserving and presenting nearly 1,000 years of history. Yet beyond the brochures, guided tours and heritage events, Hayley has had experiences of her own. Moments that are harder to explain. Moments that remind you that this isn't just a historic attraction. It's a place with a past that still lingers. Here's my conversation with Hayley Weiss. So I'm now joined by Hayley. Hayley, welcome.
Thank you.
Could you give us a quick rundown on who you are, what you do here, your role?
Yeah, so I'm the marketing manager here at Oxford Castle and Prison, and I've been here for literally just over a year now, by maybe a couple of weeks. So,
right, okay.
Yeah.
Have you experienced anything strange here at all? Because I know that you mentioned earlier that you were quite sceptical.
I think I have. Yes, it's. Do I want to admit it? Maybe not. But yeah, I've had some strange occurrences.
Okay. Would you be prepared to go into those strange occurrences?
Yes, they're all quite similar in a way. How long ago was it when I first came? But so part of my routine in the morning is when I come in, and Kezia will know this as well, is when I come in, I say good morning 3 times. As soon as I get from the gift shop into the main prison wing. And I feel like, I don't know where it started. I don't know why I started doing it. But now I feel like I have to keep doing it because I've get scratches on my arm now if I don't say it.
Scratches on your arm?
It's only really on my left arm that I've had it. I've had a couple on my right.
Okay.
But it was, and the only reason like I noticed it was because there was a few days where I'd go, oh, I haven't said it, because I was just rushing to get in, and I'd sit down in my chair and I'd be like, okay, there's another scratch there. And I thought, okay, first time, that's just a bit weird. I must have caught something. And it happened again. Again, it was on a busy day. I came in and again, I had another But this time it was, rather than it being on like my arm, I had it on the top of my hand. And again, I thought, okay, right, something odd's happening now. Brushed it off again. Third time, again, another scratch.
Third time?
Yeah, I've had it about 5 times now.
Wow.
The last one was actually just about a month ago. Again, was rushed.
And it's always when you forget to...
Yeah. So I say it every time. And so I thought, okay, look, this just feels a bit weird. Let me just check. And so I was like, is it my worktop? And I'd even say to a couple of my other colleagues, like, am I going insane? It's not my worktop. No, it's not the worktop. Okay, is it my coat? No, I was wearing different coats. Bag? No, different rucksack I was wearing. And I thought, okay, what am I catching it on? So I still haven't found a reason why this has sort of been happening. So that's why I kind of say it's a bit weird, because I haven't found the reason for it.
Yeah.
But the only thing I know that has stayed the same is I haven't said good morning.
That is absolutely intriguing, because when I interviewed Amy Hickman at Dudley Castle, she does exactly the same thing. She says good morning to the building every time she goes in, and she will say goodbye to the building. And she said it's some sort of tradition. She's always done it. You've got no idea where that came from. Did the person before do it, or?
I don't know, because I didn't really have a crossover with them.
Do you kind of feel that the building relaxes in a sense, or is it?
It's a different energy, I feel like, that's in the space. It's when it's open, when it's open, when the public are around, you get that busy vibe. But as soon as we close the doors, it feels quieter, but it doesn't feel empty either.
Okay.
So, like, I've been alone in the mornings when I come in. I'm often the first person in, sometimes by like half an hour to an hour.
Yeah.
And still, you don't feel fully on your own. Like, it feels just a bit something. I don't really know how else to word it, but you don't feel alone.
Yeah.
Even though the site's locked up.
Yeah.
You're the only one in. I haven't unlocked any other doors because I wait until somebody else arrives before I unlock the door. Yeah, it's I feel like the place has its own sort of, I don't know, it feels like it has its own personality as well. It doesn't feel like just a building. It feels like more of like a living sort of space. If that makes
it makes sense. I can see Kessie nodding at the corner of her eye as well, and she's agreeing. I'd like to ask a similar question that I asked Kessie earlier, which was, is there a particular spot in this castle? And I know there is, because you said it a little while ago, that gives you the creeps. Because I know you've got quite a famous cell here that was built specifically for someone in particular.
Yes. So we have the padded cell that was built, purpose-built for Donald Neilson, who was known as the Black Panther.
Wow.
So that is my space that I feel the most uncomfortable in. I'm quite happy in other parts, even the crypt. I still quite enjoy going into the crypt. But the padded cell is the space that you won't really catch me in. I don't like it. I don't like how it feels. And it just, that sort of space just feels, when I've said like the place feels like it's got personality, that place feels like it's just cold. Like it's just...
Right.
That it's just not the right vibes for me.
Okay. Was that cell just constructed for him, or were other people kept in it afterwards, or?
So it was originally constructed for him, but I do believe it was still used afterwards to hold people in.
And it just gives you the creeps.
Yeah. I don't like it at all.
Okay. Final question. Is Oxford Castle and Prison haunted? Do you think that there is an aura about this building? Do you think there is something about this building that has harboured and kept spirits, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, from years ago? Do you think that those spirits are still wandering around this building and interacting with staff and yourself and the public?
I think I'd be kidding myself if I said it no, because there is stuff that I can't explain from my experiences that other colleagues just can't explain. So something must be going on. But again, I work here, so I don't really want to.
Yeah. What? Again, before you go, what is that work dynamic like? I mean, if one of you have an experience, say if Kessia sees something or another member of staff sees something, are you quite open with each other in the way that you will approach each other and say, look, there's just something really strange just happens in X, Y, or Z? Or do you kind of keep it to yourselves for a little while and then talk about it, or are you quite open?
No, I think we all we only find out after we've had sort of similar experiences. It feels like for myself, I've kept that to myself because I don't know. You don't want to feel like you're persuading other people,
priming them
exactly, and they go, do you know what? That's weird. And so it's usually when somebody else has gone, I've had that. Then we all kind of keep it away because nobody really wants to admit it to ourselves, I believe here. But Kessie and I, we do end up talking, going, oh, something odd's happened. And she'll go, okay, yeah, go on, tell me what's happened. And then I tell her, and she's like, yeah, I had that a few years ago, or yeah, so-and-so's had something similar. And you're like, oh, okay, right, so there's patterns in some of these. But we don't know about them until we've both experienced them or somebody, has. So,
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And again, thank you so much for helping organise this fantastic event for me personally and for the show in such an amazing location. Thank you so much, Hayley.
No, thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure to have you here and to be able to share our experiences more than we ever have before. So thank you.
But it wasn't just Kessia and Hayley who were kind enough to share their personal experiences within these ancient walls. 2 other members of staff also stepped forward, each with their own unsettling accounts of strange moments and unexplained incidents inside Oxford Castle and prison. And what struck me most was this. These weren't dramatic retellings shaped for effect. They were calm, matter of fact. The kind of stories told by people who aren't trying to convince you of anything, only to describe what they experienced. I didn't ask leading questions, I didn't prompt for drama or embellishment. I simply let the recording roll and allowed them the space to tell their stories in their own words, exactly as they remembered them. And in a building with nearly 1,000 years of history behind its walls, sometimes the quietest accounts are the ones that stay with you the longest. Here are their experiences.
My name is Jessica and I'm currently the sales executive at Oxford Castle Prison. I used to work as a tour guide and I've been here for 4 years. I really love history, which is what drew me to the place, and I really since working here I've become really interested in prison reform, particularly because there was such a history of prison reform here at Oxford Castle, and I just find that the actions of the people trying to make lives better for the people who are imprisoned here are so inspiring, and just the way in which this place has inspired prisons across the country and really pushed for better prisons is just really important, and I think it's really valuable. My experience here happened while I was a tour guide, so it was about 3 years ago now, and I was doing a tour and I was talking about our youngest prisoner, who was called Julia Ann Crumpling, and she was just 7 years old when she was imprisoned here. She had stolen a pram and she was sentenced to 7 days imprisonment here, and I was telling her story to a tour group that were in front of me, and I was standing in the middle of the room. There was nothing behind me, and as I was talking I could feel something pulling at the back of my skirt.
My name is Jade. I am currently a tour guide at Oxford Castle and Prison. I've been here for around about 2 years. And a lot of my experiences happen in the crypt, mostly in the crypt actually. The one that really stays with me, because it was just very unexplainable, is I was standing at the back of the crypt, like the deepest in you're gonna get, and I was facing a tall group, basically, with my back to the wall, and I'm in the middle of like kind of giving this whole story, talking about the crypt, and I hear very loud, very clear, a growl coming. Now I can't really pinpoint the location of it, just because it's quite echoey in the crypt, so it's hard to distinguish where it was, but it was a very loud human, like, something was definitely off about it, but it was not like a deep rumbling growl like you hear from animals. It's very much like a guttural growl. I know, it tingles. And I just remember stopping kind of mid-sentence and looking around the room at my tour group to see if anyone else had heard it. And like, I'm just staring at blank faces, no one's registering it. And then I make eye contact with one person who like just like has the same bewildered face as me and just like nods. And I sort of, it's kind of surreal being a tour guide, because when it happens, if you're with tour groups, you kind of just have to continue doing your job. So I just kind of, I was like, okay, well, strange, let's continue, and kind of sped up the tour after that to get out of the crypt as soon as possible. And my other thing that happened to me personally, but funnily enough, a similar experience happened to my brother, who also worked at the castle on the same day. We don't know if it was at the same time, but I was in the crypt training a new tour guide, and so I was basically shadowing her tour, and I was standing at the back of the crypt while they gave their whole thing in the front. I remember I was leaning against the wall of the crypt, and tour guides, we have a radio with an earpiece that goes around our ear, just so that we can communicate with each other. And I remember just so clearly hearing like a breath, like a on the earpiece. And so I was like, okay, maybe that's a radio call. But obviously I used to work like pretty much 4 days a week here. Radio calls and radio static are very familiar noises to me, and this was just not that. It was like a human, like I even felt it, like there was an air blowing on my ear, and like I got the goosebumps around it. It was freaky. And it was like on my right ear, and I'm watching as this happens. I'm watching the tour guide, and she's not, obviously when you're new it's hard to focus with the voices in your ear, so sometimes new tour guides will take it out so that they can focus on getting it out, and it just doesn't register on her face at all that there's been a radio call. So I'm like, okay. So that was one time where I was like, that is going to be difficult to explain in my logical brain, and only to find out later in the day when me and my brother were taking the bus home that he'd had pretty much the exact same experience upstairs in the gift shop. So he was working behind the desk talking to a group that had just come out, and he just has this like on his ear as well, and he kind of looks around and there's like no one around him, and obviously he just continues on. But it was so strange, just having such similar experiences on the same day, that we just didn't tell each other until after the toy. It was freaky. Yeah, I'll tell my brothers. Hang on, one of them's written down. So, my brother, Cameron, he was the manager on site, so he kind of did the open up and the closing and all that stuff. And the most jarring, like, me and my brother, like, we watch horror movies, we enjoy that kind of spookier stuff, but we're not dead set on the fact that ghosts exist. Like, you know, we're very sort of in the middle area, if you can say, on the fence a bit. But this is one of the only times I've truly seen my brother be shaken up telling the story, where he was the last person on site locking up for the night, and he's in the gift shop. And the way the gift shop works, you have to turn a lock on a pole to set the alarm and then leave and then lock the door. So he was going to do that, and he was looking down at this lock to lock it, and he just like basically hackles stand up on the back of his neck. His hair just stands on end, and he instinctively looks up around, and he just watches this shadowy figure glide quickly past him to the other side of the room. Like, it wasn't a out of the corner of the eye thing. He instinctively looked up to be like, is there something here? And he sees this shadowy figure walk across. And yeah, that is the one time in which my brother is like, yeah, he was very disturbed by that. He's also had an experience in the crypt. I don't know what it is about the crypt, but obviously with its history, I don't know if Kezia has told you about it. You know, it's more likely to be one of the more active places. But his experience was, he was also on a close-up. At the end of the day, all the lights were turned off, and he was going to check the fire escape to make sure it's locked. And he wanted me to specify that he has excellent peripheral vision. And he was walking to the fire escape across the crypt, and he very obviously sees a hand reach out to grab his arm, which he kind of, obviously he caught that, so he looks and he sees nothing. But yeah, that's one thing that he's just like, Jade, I can't explain that. I have no idea. It was just, yeah. Freaky. So the crypt is a sort of chamber built beneath the church that used to lie on our site, currently where the more modern prison buildings are currently. Used to be a sort of chapel called St. George's Chapel, and this was built in 1074, so a long time ago. And the crypt was the only lasting bit of this, because the rest was destroyed by the parliamentarians, and this crypt actually ended up being buried for about 150 years. But this crypt, so you'll probably see it if you go there. It's what you'd imagine the catacombs to be like. It's kind of a chamber, a hollow chamber with these beautiful pillars holding up the roof. And what they used this for essentially was to store bodies. So what would happen is that if someone died, they'd transport their body to this crypt, and it would act as a morgue, essentially. And there they would prepare them in whatever burial way they would. And the monks would perform sort of religious rites, and then they would transfer them to the graves in the churchyard. So this room started off currently as a quite an ominous place to be. Very, very just very deeply ominous, I say. And then I wouldn't be able to tell you how they used it going further, but I do know that the prisoners also spent some time in this crypt as well, because when they rediscovered it in the late 1790s, the current owner, the prison governor, made these prisoners rebuild the crypt. And so you'll actually see two of the pillars in there are only about 200 years old, because the prisoners built them. And so the prisoners spent quite a lot of time down there as well, doing their manual labor, doing their hard labor. And you can actually see there's still the foundations of the original church that they dug up are in there. You'll be able to see that. But the reason I feel so drawn to the crypt is not only because it's quiet, but because the energy in there is just so strong, but not entirely in a negative way. Like a lot of times when, like obviously when you hear a growl in the crypt, you go straight to anything demonic, but it's more like you get the feeling when you go into the crypt that whatever is in there just wants peace and quiet. And so if you abide by those rules, they kind of welcome you in. But if you're a tour guide like me and you talk and you project your voice, they get a bit upset with that. But it's naturally a terrifying place to be, but I find it quite comforting, to be fair. One thing I do like to say to scare the guests is, because the crypt is underground, it's beneath what used to be the Victorian prison cells. The earth around the crypt is all burial site. So because as we moved on from being a castle to being a prison, we began just burying prisoners in unmarked graves, essentially. So whatever, there used to be a moat around, they filled that in with bodies. And so when they excavated, they were everywhere. And so the ground that's literally surrounding this chamber is a burial site, essentially. So even while you're in there, you can feel the weight. It's very, very obvious. And it's heavy. Yeah.
We now entered the final segment of what had already been an incredible day, the personal tour. While Hayley joined us for parts of the evening, it was predominantly Kessia and myself walking those historic corridors together, and what an opportunity this truly was, to be guided through the entire site by someone who not only knows the prison inside and out, but who understands how the building breathes, how it settles, how it changes once the public have gone home and silence takes over. This wasn't a standard tour. This was after hours. Empty landings, shadows stretching a little further than they do during the day. So now let's return to the recording and journey through Oxford Castle and Prison as the darkness slowly descends. Okay, Kessia,
Yeah.
where are we right now?
So we are in the base of St George's Tower, which is the oldest part to the site, dates back to around 1009.
Okay.
So we know it was built by the Anglo-Saxons following St Brice's Day massacre to protect the town from any further Viking invasions. And then this wall here, we believe, is the last standing wall of the Norman chapel, St George's Chapel.
I mean, this is really imposing. This is so impressive.
Yeah.
We're looking at, as Kessie said, a huge wall, which has got to be 30, maybe 40 feet high, something like that. And this massive arch that leads to, what would this have been?
So this is one of the very first rooms in St George's Chapel. St George's Tower. And you can see 3 circles on the floorboards.
Yeah.
Yep, those are footpaths that were walked into these solid oak floorboards over 20 years by Victorian prisoners.
I thought those boards were warped.
No.
That is actual trail path of those.
Yeah. So in the middle, just here,
Yeah.
we had a device called a capstan wheel. So just behind that wall is
Yeah.
the castle mill stream, and there used to be a mill attached to it. And this is the only known surviving example of a capstan wheel being used as hard labour in an English prison.
Amazing.
So the capstan wheel was in the middle, and the mechanism underneath the tower was connected to the water wheel, and that pumped water to the tank room, which we'll be going into later. And then 3 sets of prisoners per spoke would be pushing this wheel for a total of, we believe, about 10 hours a day.
10 hours a day.
We think they'd have done it in rotations of 2 hours and gone off to do a different punishment after 2 hours. But yeah.
Again, I will be taking a photo of this because you seriously have to see the oak flooring because it looks warped. But when you do start to look at it closely, you can see the path that has been worn in that circular pattern of those people that were constantly moving that wheel around and around. Brilliant. Let's move on.
Yeah, we're going to go up the tower.
Okay, so Kessia has now brought me into Matilda's room, and we've had to get to this via a kind of a short, thin corridor, but a drop of, say, a good, say, 3 feet from the actual spiral staircase that runs up the tower. Kessia, what is the story behind this place?
So this is one of the first, I guess, prison cells that we have in the castle. We've held prisoners here since 1216. The first prisoners were actually the drunken rowdy students of the university. But in 1142, we actually held Empress Matilda prisoner here for about 3 months. So this was during the Civil War known as the Anarchy, and she held the castle whilst her cousin, who was King Stephen, held the rest of the town. So she had no way to escape, but it is said that she escaped by climbing out of this window, abseiling down the tower, and then ice skating down the frozen river to Abingdon.
Indiana Jones.
Absolutely.
How high up are you? You say abseil.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I know that the tower in full is about 82 foot tall.
Wow.
And we are in the first room halfway up. So we're not even halfway, I would say.
And this is the room that you spoke about in the interview. You don't like.
I don't like this one.
Interesting. I walked over as you walk in here for the doorway over onto the right-hand side in the corner, which you mentioned.
Yes, this is where I mostly have to go because I have to go check a fire alarm.
There was a reading on the EMF meter that literally after a number of seconds, it didn't peak hugely, but it did give a high reading and then completely disappeared, and I haven't been able to find the reading since. It wasn't due to the recording equipment, and it wasn't due to my mobile phone. There is nothing else around that I can see. No. And it is dark. Kessia and I are stood here literally the light that's coming from the short corridor and the light that's coming from this absolutely ominous small window with lots of bars on. Where are we going next?
We're going to go up to the next room, further into the tower.
Fantastic. Let's go. Right, okay, I have to describe this room. It's probably 25, maybe 30 feet square, literally. Hugely high walls and these massive buttresses, literally, I suppose you could call them, or supports, that are supporting these huge iron RSJs that are holding some sort of tanks up. What room are we in here? And what history is held in here? This is spectacular.
So this is actually the room that we call the Civil War room.
Okay.
Because in the 1640s, during the English Civil War, I mentioned King Charles uses it as a prisoner of war camp for parliamentarians.
Yeah.
Actually, thanks to John Lilburn, we know that sometimes he kept 60 men in this room at one time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That kind of puts a bit of perspective
Yeah.
on it, doesn't it? That feels a big room to the two of us just stood here, but
Yeah.
60
So
men. Yeah.
we can only have 25 people in this tower today at one time, legally.
Right, okay.
So 60 men, and there were 3 rooms to this tower, so that is not just 60 men per this room, that's 60 men to all 3 rooms. At one point he is recorded to have just over 120 prisoners in this tower
Oh
alone.
my God.
And John Lilburn's reports also tell us that they were fed twice a week, there were no toilets.
Twice a week?
Yeah. They weren't allowed to leave to use the toilets, they had to go where they stood. If they died in here, they probably stayed here for up to 6 months because the room was only cleaned around once every 6
God,
months.
The smell.
Yeah.
Not
quite
just
awful.
from the defecation and urine and bodily odour, but
Yeah.
then you've got a corpse or corpses rotting. That is.
And also people that were still alive, they were
Would feed off
tortured as
them.
well in here.
I'm saying, would they feed off them?
We don't know.
Okay.
They did find bones when they took up the floor.
So you're saying people were tortured in here as well?
Not necessarily in here, but definitely in the castle.
Okay.
We do have the name of a gentleman that the king's prison keeper. He would take people out and burn their fingers, so that I think the direct quote is that their flesh ran like wax, so they could not pick up arms against the king again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's quite a heavy room, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see if we can get a reading from this and then we'll move on. So, Kessia, we're now in the tank room.
Yeah.
Give us a description of this place and some of the history that was ground into the walls.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
So this is the final room in the tank. This is the final room in the tower. It is kind of as high as it goes. So you've got the roof just
Yeah.
kind of pointing upwards because there would have been a watchtower at the top. So that because this was a defensive tower of the city, we could see over the walls and see the River Thames to see if anybody was coming up to attack us, like the Vikings did.
Unbelievable.
But after the water tanks were put in, the room, as far as we know, was not used because the tanks would have been full of water. So there'd have been no floor in here, and they'd have just gone for a bit of a swim.
And yeah, and these are biblical sized tanks. They're absolutely huge. And the cross beams that are held up just above the tanks. I mean, you have to see, well, you probably can't, you're not able to see this. Is this somewhere that you bring people on tour? No, so we are actually seeing something that is closed off to the public. I can see what you mean now about, yeah, you can actually see some of the ruptures in the tanks. They are absolutely vast, and as Kessia said, you could quite easily, if they were full of water, go for a swim. Okay, so we are right at the top of the tower now. You may hear a little bit of wind coming through the windshield. What is the mound?
So that is a man-made hill that was built by just over 800 Anglo-Saxon slaves in around 2 months.
Okay, 2 months.
2
okay.
months. to be the motte of the Motte and Bailey Castle.
Right.
So there would have stood a 10-sided keep at the top of it. We believe it stood probably around the height of the trees that we can see.
Yeah.
And then the mound itself would actually have been clay, not grass, because all the soil around here is clay. And the whole point of it is a defensive mechanism. So if people actually did manage to get through the moat and up the hill, you'd slide straight back down in your full chainmail.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've got to say as well, the views of Oxford from up here, they are unbelievable. It's absolutely stunning. You're looking at huge amounts of historic towers poking themselves above the cityscape, if you like, and then as you turn around, you've got fields, beautiful fields and woodland. The Oxfordshire countryside, yeah, and literally to join us while we're stood up here, we've got a flock of geese in V formation, and there's a train. Okay, so we are in a really, really atmospheric part of this place. Please describe this to us, Cassia. This is the actual room where, when you listen to this back, this is where Jade had one of her really disturbing experiences with a guttural growl. Give us some description and explanation about the history of this place. It's fascinating.
So this is St George's Crypt. It is the oldest part of the castle that you're still able to see today. It was built in 1074, supposedly after Robert Doyley was visited by an apparition of the Virgin Mary, telling him that he'd be going to hell for all of the Norman invading.
Wow.
So the 4 pillars that you can see just here with all of the carvings on them, these are the original 4 Norman pillars, so they're just over 950 years old.
God.
And then the 2 back here are not as old. They were built by Georgian prisoners in the 1790s.
Now, Jade mentioned about this being a burial ground? Or
As such, it was the castle morgue. So crypts are quite cold places. They're designed to be essentially a giant fridge.
Yeah.
And we know that they would have brought the castle's dead here, prepared them for burial, and then there are passageways just behind these walls here that led up to the burial site that's still there, but it's under the courtyard area now. Yeah.
And the floor?
Yes.
The original floor? There's nothing underneath this, or?
We're not sure. We know it's probably original to the 1790s.
Okay.
So when the castle was destroyed at the end of the English Civil War, the chapel was as well.
Yeah.
And then this was actually rediscovered by the Georgian prisoners when they were building their own prison in the 1790s.
What a great job.
Yes.
We also walked through a corridor to get here, and that, you were mentioning that there are foundations from what was it? Sorry.
So they're the foundations of St George's Chapel. So the Norman chapel that was here, which is actually quite influential in a lot of our history and also kind of history as we know it today.
Right.
Because it predates Oxford University by 100 years as a centre for higher education. And it's also here that the scholar Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote the book A History of the Kings of Britain, which is the first written down record of King Arthur and Merlin.
You can't get kind of more prevalent than that, really, can you? There are so many layers to this site. As we've walked through these corridors, you're getting foundations from one era to foundations from something else to something else. It's just been built upon and built upon and built upon. It's truly, truly stunning. Again, especially to be wandering around something like this where you know that people have been brought down here.
Yeah.
The dead have been brought down here and left down here. Mm-hmm. And it's not far off 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
No wonder you love your job.
It's definitely a bonus. As somebody that loves history, it's so cool to be able to see it all every day. Even the roof here, the ceiling, it's been rebuilt from rubble from the old castle and the old chapel. So we, for example, just here, we've got a lock in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And we believe that came from the old castle keep.
Again, that's kind of just a little bit of speculation, but it's just really cool things like that just little hidden bits that people might not know, might not see every day. They come down here and we get to.
So, where do we venture to next?
The prison wing.
Right, lead the way. Okay, the prison wing.
Yes.
Wow, lovely. Okay. Give us some insight, Kessia. Tell us about this place.
Yeah, so the cells were built in about 1795, and they were originally built to hold one prisoner in each room.
Okay.
Two entrances. You had one here and one on this side, this wall,
Right.
that would have gone straight out into the exercise yard. The Victorians then bricked those up and put in bars in the window on one side of the wall.
Yeah.
So that way you get fresh air coming in, because they believed miasmas, bad air.
Right.
So that way we're supposed to get rid of the diseases.
I'm assuming because there's a second door here.
Yes, we're in two cells.
Okay.
So when we closed, we were used for filming for a little bit, and then the archaeologists came in. And because we are a historic site on top of a historic site, they got permission to knock down some walls, dig up the floors, see what they could find.
Okay, so we are in Mary Blandy's space, and before this whole interview started, I was correctly, what would you call it? I was correctly instructed to change the script, but I decided to get rid of an entire paragraph, and it was. Kessie was absolutely 100% right, but we are now in. Take it away.
Mary Blandy's room. So we call this cell Mary Blandy's room because that's the story that we tell in here. However, she actually never stayed in the prison wing because she
Okay.
was rich enough to rent 2 rooms from the prison governor inside his own house.
Right. So how long was she here for?
She was not here for very long. I think about 6 months in total. She was here. I think she was sent here in she was sent here in 1751, and then she was executed in March 1752.
And that is the story of Mary Blandy. I got it totally wrong. But there you go. We all make mistakes. Okay, so where are we now, Kessia? This place looks absolutely astonishing.
So this is Debtor's Tower. This is the bottom floor of, or the ground floor of Debtor's Tower. We've got the bars up to kind of mark out where the cells would have roughly gone. You'd be here in the evening if you owed people money, but during the day you'd be expected to work. You'd collect your pay and give it to the governor to pay off your debt. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so this guy on the wall here, on the bars, Thomas Williams, 26 years old, crime, shop breaking.
Yes.
What was shop breaking?
What it says on the tin, really. Breaking into a shop,
okay.
yeah.
6 months hard labour.
Yeah. So hard labour would have been anything from the capstan wheel to something that we have called shot drill, which is where it sounds a lot worse. It's not much better. You have a pile of cannonballs, one end of the courtyard, and you have to pick them up one at a time and take them down the other side of the courtyard and build up a pile. Once you've done that, you have to pick it up and do it all over again in the same direction.
So there was no purpose to it, it was literally...
No. There was no purpose to a lot of hard labour. The whole point of it is to break you down physically and mentally. Some of it did have purposes. The things that we gave to the women and children, cleaning, laundry, also oakum picking was given to them. That's where you pull apart a rope until it's just the fibres.
It's just the fibres, yeah.
And then we'd often buy these ropes from the Navy and then sell them back to the Navy, which is where we get the saying, money for old rope.
Wow, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they would use that to fix the ship or mattresses, pillows, that kind of thing.
Any spooky paranormal experiences in here?
I haven't, no, but
Alright.
this is the room that Jess had her tour group. She was stood just there,
Okay.
where she felt the tugging on her skirt.
Yeah. And again, you will hear that story.
Yeah.
A lot of deep history here. A lot of deep history. So this guy was actually here.
Yeah. We don't exactly know which cell
Yeah.
he was in or anything, but we know he was here. This is the first kind of record of prisoners that we have here. Sort of visual record of the prisoners.
And I'm seeing something projected onto
Yeah.
a wall through here, and that's a similar thing, is it?
Yes.
That's
So
a
this
record
is
of...
a record of different prisoners from different ages. So this is Julia. She was our youngest prisoner. She was only 7 years old when she was arrested.
Arrested for what?
She stole a pram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we've got a couple of the other mugshots of some of the children that were arrested and brought here throughout the years. These ones are all from the 1870s, 1870 to 1871. And then we've got some from the 1920s. So this gentleman was arrested in 1929 and brought here. That's where we start seeing the kind of side profile of our prisoners.
Yeah.
Some of the men that were brought here in the 1870s as well, including some women, Elizabeth Hinton, I think her name is. Reconcile West, my favourite. I don't really know what he did, I just absolutely love the name.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you can really see in their faces as well, like they're so young, some of them. As I said, Julia was only 7. We had one little boy who was called George Jordan. He was here, by the age of 8, he'd been here 3 times already. So for his 3rd sentence, he was sentenced to 4 months of hard labour and to be whipped 12 times with a birch rod.
Oh my God. Okay, so our last location, which brings us to our journey's end, is totally fascinating. Straight away, I'm looking at a photo of Donald Nelson, the Black Panther, the one and only, and it was actually his own cell.
Yes, yeah. So this is the padded cell. It was built specifically for him within 10 days in the hospital wing. So this top section of the prison wing was renovated in the 1970s to make way for a hospital wing, which has been described as a cottage hospital.
Right.
And then in 10 days, they had to build this cell for him because he was our only Category A prisoner. We were a Category C prison.
Yeah.
And he was kept here during his trial, which happened over at County Hall, what is now County Hall.
And then he was moved to
Norwich, I believe.
Norwich.
Yes.
Well, I can't thank you all enough for this. Fascinating tour. We've been on a really spooky journey, actually. There's been some strange readings on the EMF meter, but they may have an explanation, they may not. Thank you, Kessia, so much for not only the interview, but being my guide today. Thank you, Hayley, as well, and give me a thank, give the thanks to the other members of staff who were kind enough to share their stories as well. So I'm about to leave Oxford Castle and Prison. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much.
As we come to the end of this episode, I want to say a huge thank you to Kessia and Hayley, not only for organising this incredible opportunity, but for being so generous with their time, so open with their experiences, and so genuinely welcoming from the moment I arrived. My thanks also go to the other 2 members of staff who stepped forward to share their personal accounts. It's never easy speaking publicly about experiences you can't fully explain, and their honesty is what made this episode what it is. I truly can't recommend a visit to Oxford Castle and Prison enough. It's a place like no other, a place with its own atmosphere, its own rhythm, and its own presence. It's clear that the people who work there don't just maintain the building, they understand it, they care for it, they respect it, some even talk to it. They are parts of the story now, just as much as those who passed through its walls centuries ago. And when you stand inside those ancient stones after dark, you can't help but feel that perhaps the building remembers. Until next time, stay safe. and take care.
Ronnie Corbett here. I remember the day that I used to do lots of cock-ups. And here's a couple for you right now. You didn't think it all went that well, did you?
To help us unravel more of this building's haunted past, I'm joined by Kessia, who knows these walls better than most. Kessia, thank you so much for joining us today and being our guide. To begin with, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your role here at Oxford Castle and Prison? Prison? Doing that again.
French. Sorry.
God, I'm crap at French. I'm recording that as well. I might put that in the outside. So I'm now joined with... No, I'm not.